Hey, it's Ty Hicks. Thank you so much for tuning in and welcome to our Mastering Ethical and Lasting Influence course. I'm so excited to have you in here and we are going to go at it. So I hope you're excited. We've got a lot of content to cover and I know that this is going to be a transformative experience for you if you commit to making it so. And what I mean by this is I've put together a system. I've really taken upon myself to take the principles and insights that I've discovered over the past 10 plus years, working in multiple industries and with over 55,000 individuals, and put them in a systematized process for you to digest. I started thinking, what are the skills that are necessary for people to be able to move powerfully through life, to be able to get what you want in business and in life, to be able to have the relationships that you desire. And what I realized is that if you want to have those things, you have got to have the skill set of influence. That is paramount. I don't care whether it's influencing your romantic partner in an ethical way so that you can get more of what you want in that area, or if it's having a better relationship with your employees or your team or your boss, or whether it is making more sales at work or increasing your pipeline, or whether it is just serving people in a deep and profound way. Maybe it's public speaking, maybe it is influencing your kids or your parents or whomever. What I came to understand at an early age is that there are clear distinctions between the skill set that amateurs apply to this arena and what masters apply to it. And often I think it's very tempting for us to look at people who we find charismatic and influential and say, oh, well, that's just not me. And what I want to tell you is that certainly was not me either, and don't get me wrong, I'll be a student for the rest of my life, and so I'm constantly looking for new and more distinctions just like yourself, and so we're kindred spirits in that regard. But what I want you to understand is that you can master this, that there is a set of principles out there that if you understand them, apply them, struggle with them, make them your own, and sort of get them in your body in the sense of being able to reproduce them and not just know them at an intellectual level, you can master this. And this course is, I think you're going to find, a really comprehensive effort to be able to put together the most critical insights necessary to master influence and put them in that step-by-step process. And so in this first session, what I really want to do is I want to go over the entirety of the 4 phases and the 15 steps that are necessary to achieve lasting and ethical influence. And before we dive in, let me just set the stage too by exemplifying to you what I believe we should all be striving to do, and that is to influence with integrity. And you'll hear me use this phrase many, many times, and there's a couple key reasons why I make this emphasis. So number one, to influence with integrity means that you are only empowering people to make decisions that empower them, okay? So you're only influencing people to take actions that actually will improve their quality of life. And perhaps you've had an experience like this. Let me ask you, have you ever had a moment where you've been with an influencer, a salesman or a saleswoman, or somebody who's trying to get you to do something, and you could just tell immediately that they were only after their own interests, that they really weren't looking out for you? So how effective were you influenced by them? Probably not very effective at all. So the first thing we want to understand is that when you are not in alignment about trying to get your prospect or probable buyer to take action, and you know that that is for a sincere reason that's going to move their life forward, you're firstly not going to be effective. Because as you'll see very soon, if you cannot stand behind your offer with absolute conviction, then you're missing 90% of the entire piece. But the other thing I want you to understand is that that's not what we're going for. We're not going for teaching you tactics and strategies that will allow you to twist people's arms into taking actions that disempower them. But rather, what we want to understand is that our prospects, more times than not, will have a certain model of the world, a certain set of beliefs internally that gives them a story of limitation that says, well, this isn't right for me because of A, B, C, and D. And what we may know about your opportunity is that, in fact, it will move their life forward in a profound and deep way, and they may not be able to see that. So what we're going after is how you actually create symmetry and alignment with your prospect. How is it that you actually bring them from the space of, no, there's no way I can, to, wow, now I see a new set of possibilities. So if that's what you're going for, if you are here to increase your ethical influence, then you're in the right place. Another thing I will tell you is this is not a sales training, although the skills and insights here will be highly applicable to anything that you do in the sales or fundraising arena. You'll find that I have background experience in both industries, and so a lot of my examples will come from those. But I also have experience not only in direct sales and high dollar fundraising, but a lot of my insights actually come from principles of leadership, actually getting hundreds of thousands of people recruited to be lasting volunteers and leaders for organizations. And the reason why I'm so grateful for that piece of my experience is it enabled me to understand this concept of lasting influence. It enabled me to understand that in order for you to have a relationship with your prospect for a number of 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, you've got to approach things a little bit differently, and you've got to have a different psychology. And that's what we're going for here. Let's assume you are in sales or fundraising for a minute. Wouldn't it be the dream to get people into the door, get that initial sale or that initial donation, and then to cultivate that relationship over a period of a multitude of years so that their commitment to your offer becomes stronger and stronger and stronger? And not only that, that they bring their friends and colleagues into your pipeline, and that you're able to lean on the credibility you've established with them, the deep rapport and lasting alignment that you've created, so that you can further add referrals into your business. That's what we're going for here. We're talking about the long game, not how do you get somebody to take action quickly and then essentially ensure that they regret it 5, 10, or 15 minutes later. That's not what we're going for here. But what you will find in this training is the best skills and insights that I have available and that I've been able to survey from the industry of the world's highest performing influencers. And so a lot of my examples come from clinical research as well as many industry leaders in the field. And I'll be happy to point those out to you, as well as give recommendations of how you can deepen your training beyond what I'll be providing for you. And what I also want to say to you is, I don't know what your specific situation is. I don't know if you are a brand new influencer and you've got a message that you want to share and you're not entirely sure how to get started. I don't know if you're somebody that considers themselves potentially above this training and you think, I'm not sure if this is really going to provide value for me. And I can tell you that no matter who you are, I will promise to deliver for you profound insights and bring something to the table for you. Whether you're a novice, whether you've been in your industry for a multitude of years, I think you're going to be excited to find new distinctions here. And that brings me to my final point before we jump in, and that is that I want to challenge you to consider how much of this material you actually know by the end of it. And when I say know, here's what I mean. Have you ever attended a training or a workshop or a seminar like this, and you got lots of useful distinctions, lots of great information, and then you forgot to apply it? Me too. And that's not what we're going for here. Studies show that after about 3% of just listening to something passively, 90% of that material is out of your brain. You can greatly increase your retention by writing down notes and key insights, and so I encourage you to do that as we proceed through the training. You can increase it the most, however, by applying it directly and taking action. And so what you're going to find is that this is a course that is designed for you to actually move towards the arc of mastery. That is why I am here with you, and I've got a high standard for my students. So if you're here, commit to mastery. And so what this means is, if I challenge you or ask you to write something or to put down an insight or a strategy in your action book, if I give you an exercise and ask you to do it, understand it's not for me, it's for you. And that I understand after 10 plus years of trying to master these skills, the ineffective way to do it, which is to just assume that you can listen to these things and to have them rattling up here in your brain and that they will therefore be able to be reproduced by you. That's not how it works. So what we're going to do is I'm going to be giving you this content piece by piece, and I'm going to be challenging you as we go to apply it and customize it directly to the area in which you need it most. So in your action book, you'll find specific language templates I'm giving you to kind of get the gears turning. This is by no means an example of the absolute most effective language you could possibly use, but I put these language templates in there to take these big picture concepts and to narrow them down into a specific applicable strategy. And so you can look at them, you can read them and go, how does that apply to my industry? How could I tweak it? How could I change it? And so that's the first resource that I'm providing for you. But also in your action books, there are some questions that I'm going to be prompting you to answer as we move through this training. And you need to answer these. And when you answer them, the other thing I'm going to share with you is you're going to need to pause this and take some time and write. Very often you'll find me say, write until your brain is completely empty. And what I mean by this is you need to write pen and on the paper until there's absolutely nothing left in your brain in some of these areas, because sometimes the most valuable information will only come out at the end. So I want you to commit to mastery. And what that means is don't blow through this training. What it means is pick it apart. Go for a few minutes, stop, write, apply it. It means that when there's a challenge that needs to be executed, do the challenge. Now again, I can't control what you do, and so ultimately it is up to you. But what I can share with you, having been somebody who has been obsessed with personal development and trying to increase my abilities in multiple areas, especially influence, for a number of years, having consumed probably tens of thousands of hours of video training, much like what you're watching right now, what I can tell you is you're not going to get close to mastery unless you actually apply this as we go. And so take these challenges seriously. If you want to stay in the area of skill that most people stay, which is intermediate for their entire life, or perhaps slightly above intermediate, then fine, don't take action. But if you genuinely want to approach mastery, you've got to take action. And again, I've been there when I thought, oh, I'll just listen, I'll be fine. But again, you're not going to get the acceleration you want unless you actually do it. So try it out. So here we go, jumping right in. What I want to do in the remainder of this session is really go through the whole blueprint. I want to give you an overview of the 4 big phases that go into achieving lasting and ethical influence. And then I want to break that apart into the 15 sub-steps. And we're not going to be diving into detail in each one of these, but what I want you to do is to kind of get a sense. I want to create the map in your mind, if you will, and then we're going to go back in and fill in the blanks and add some new distinctions. But I want you to get an overview of how this process works. And by the way, let me also share with you that when I first dedicated myself to mastering the principles of influence and decided that that was something that I wanted to do, I was incredibly surprised to find that the insights necessary to do that were not the ones I thought were going to be needed. Here's what I mean. I thought that in order to get more sales, to raise more money, and to be able to be more impactful in my interactions with people, that I would need to learn the tactics, the strategies. And don't get me wrong, we're going to have plenty of strategies that are tactical in this training, so don't get me wrong. But what I meant is that I thought I just needed to learn the closes. I thought I needed to learn all the specific language patterns necessary to get people to take action. And so my view of what influence was completely narrow. It was in a very small box. And now, thankfully, I've been able to expand that and realize that what we're going for here is not that short-term influence that just gets you what you want in terms of a sale or what have you immediately. But what we're going for is a deeper, broader, and more profound type of influence, and that is lasting and ethical influence. So if you are here because you want to make an impact, you're going to see that the strategies and insights necessary to actually cultivate that muscle within you to be a better influencer may require some insights and strategies that you didn't originally anticipate. So anyway, you'll see what I mean as we go. So number 1, and this was perhaps one of the biggest lessons I learned that completely changed the game for me. If you want to be able to be an effective influencer, what you have got to be able to do above all else. In fact, if there was only one specific insight that I could probably give you out of this entire training, it would probably be unpacking phase number 1, and that is to develop an unreasonable psychology. To develop an unreasonable psychology. And what I mean by developing an unreasonable psychology is to make it an absolute must that you influence your prospect. And that sounds cheesy, that sounds cliche, that sounds rote, but it's not. Most people only lie in the area of intermediacy because they fail to master this piece. And that's what I want you to understand, is that if you truly want to be effective, if you truly want to be able to influence any person in any situation and bring them closer to your point of view or closer to taking action on your offer, you have got to make it a must. And that means that you've got to have alignment from head to toe about what your outcome is that you're committed to achieving with your prospect. And therefore, you will have absolute congruency between what you want to say and what actually comes out of your mouth. Because let me ask you something. Have you ever been attempting to influence someone, and as you were talking, you really realized that you were just kind of up here in your head and you were thinking, oh, what if they don't like this? What if they feel like it's not right for them? What if I'm wasting my time? What if I'm wasting their time? And you started getting in this analytical death spiral as you were trying to reach them and influence them. I'm sure you've had a situation like this. I certainly have. Where that stems from, what I want you to understand at a high level is that where that stems from is your lack of full understanding that your opportunity or offer is going to benefit your prospect in a profound way. In such a profound way that it overrides the cost that you are asking for in return. Because an influencer who is fully aligned with the opportunity that they have to provide and knows the value that it has, they will have no difficulty keeping after it until it is achieved. They will have no problem going back to the prospect time and time again when they say no and no and no. And so that's what I want you to understand is, if you want to be a more effective influencer, you've got to first draw a line in the sand in your mind that says, this is the only way forward. And what this requires, by the way, in order for us to influence with integrity, is that you're standing behind an offer or an opportunity, a product, whatever the case is, that you really believe in. And I know that some of you are probably on this training and listening, and the company you work for or the thing that you're trying to get people to buy into may not be something that makes your soul sing. It may not be something that you truly believe in every fiber of your being is something that those people should take action on. And I gotta tell you, that's probably the single biggest reason why you're failing to influence people. So you may have to make some interesting decisions about what your future as an influencer is going to look like. If you're not standing behind a product you believe in with your full heart and soul, it's time to find something else. So that's what we need to do. Number one is make influencing a must. The second thing we want to be able to do here, stick with blue, we've got consistency, is you've got to anticipate fear and demonstrate courage. Okay, so what do I mean by this? What I mean is that there is a common myth amongst influencers that if you create your pitch and if you give it to your prospect, that in an ideal world, they're supposed to just say yes the first time and move forward. And that if they say no, that somehow it is justified to go into fear and reaction mode and to get anxious and to get in this space where you are thinking one thing, but your mouth is saying a different thing, and you trip over your words, and you get in this place that no influencer wants to be in. So what I want you to understand going into this is that people are going to say no. In fact, they're going to say no a whole hell of a lot. And you need to be not only ready for this, you need to be expecting it, but you need to learn to get excited about it. And let me just ask you, since we're just covering this at the high level right now, what would it mean for you if whenever a prospect said no to you instead of dropping your head and going, oh crap, you all of a sudden got excited and perked up and your energy went to another level. And you said, great, now I've got an opportunity to show them something new. That's what we're going for here. So not only do you have to draw the line in the sand in your own mind and make influencing a must, but you've got to understand that people are going to say no. The fear is going to rise up in you internally that says, ooh, am I pushing too hard? Am I disturbing them? And am I interrupting their day, right? This is a big source of what we call reluctance, where this comes from. And you've got to understand that you've got to demonstrate courage in these areas, and that means moving through it. And so we're going to break that apart and show you some specific ways to make that happen. But imagine if no matter when no matter when a prospect said no to you, you went, great, I'm going to keep moving forward. And in fact, if it raised your energy and excitement up even more. So that's what we're going for. So along with developing an unreasonable psychology, we also want to make sure that we are cultivating care and controlling our focus. All right, what does that mean? What I mean is, what I have found time and time again, and not only have I had experience as an influencer myself, but now being a national influence trainer working with tens of thousands of people across the country, what I can tell you is that most people fail because they get stuck focusing on themselves. Most influencers are failing because they're worried about how they look. They're worried about their own insecurities. They're worried about how they're being perceived. They're worried about being judged by their prospect. They're worried that they're not enough. All of these little mechanisms and sources of fear show up whenever the influencer needs to be on their A game, and whenever the influencer needs to be completely in synergy with the prospect. And that is the biggest source of why influencers fail to break through in that area. And so I hope you're getting excited, because what you can do once you have gotten behind a product that you actually believe in, and once you've understood that fear is going to show up, that people are going to say no many, many times, is we can get to a spot where you feel prideful about your role as an influencer. And when somebody tells you no, you understand that it is just a temporary, limiting understanding that they have about the value of what you're providing to them. And again, influencing with integrity means that you're standing behind something that you genuinely know is right for your prospect. If at any point in the process of you influencing your prospect, you realize that your opportunity or offer would actually disempower them, it's time to stop. And I want to be crystal clear on this. So hear me now when I say that you cannot use that as an excuse to say, oh, well, the opportunity wasn't right for them, and to say, that's why I didn't close. This is one of the biggest excuses that I hear from influencers time and time again. So only you, when you go to bed at night and you have to make your peace with how you spent your days, are going to be accountable to yourself and say, did I let somebody slip through my hands for a genuine reason? Did I let them go because I knew that if they took action, it would genuinely disempower them? Or am I making an excuse? And could I have done more? Could I have developed more of an unreasonable psychology that said, no matter what, I'm going to keep pushing through until I reach this person? So you've got to be able to make sure you do that. But the simple insight I want you to understand here before we dive in detail is that instead of focusing on your own self, instead of getting inside your head and going, oh, what are they thinking right now? Are they judging me, etc., and getting in that death spiral we talked about, what you've got to be able to do is simply cultivate an immense level of care for your prospect. And again, that sounds simple, but it is not something that most people know how to do or do on a regular basis. So we want to pick that apart and show you how to make that happen. And the more you are controlling your focus externally on the prospect as opposed to on yourself, the fear disappears. When you are focused on a mission to serve, then all of a sudden it doesn't matter what you look like or what your insecurities are, because you know that you're there for a dedicated purpose. And what we really want to tap into here is what we call definiteness of purpose. That's going to allow you to have a new level of creativity in the process of working with your prospect. So all of this wraps up into having an absolute unreasonable psychology that says, I'm committed to reaching my prospect. There's not a damn way I'm walking away from them, because I understand that if they do not take action, they're getting cheated. They genuinely are going to miss out on something incredible unless they take action. And that's a profoundly different mindset than most influencers walk into their opportunities with, because most influencers walk in and go, ooh, am I trying to cheat them out of something? Because they don't have full alignment behind the actual offer or opportunity that they're trying to sell. So that's what you want to get clear on, is making sure that all of these pieces are mastered. Now, once you have gotten yourself to the spot where you have developed an unreasonable psychology, what you want to do next is understand that in order for your prospect to buy in to what you have to say, to take action, you need to create the ultimate frame for your offer. Create the ultimate frame for your offer. Because what I can tell you is, after studying the world's top influencers, they are not necessarily the best closers, although that is something that they have mastered in some form or another. And they're not necessarily the people who make the best presentations. However, the people who are master influencers are people who understand that teeing yourself up properly is far more important than the actual swing. And so what I mean by this is, we're going to show you the science of creating what Robert Cialdini has called privileged moments of influence. And we're going to show you how mental associations play into this, how you can't just cold call somebody and then in 60 seconds get them to purchase your product. Well, I guess you could, but that's not something that I find happens very often in our industry. So rather, what we want to help you understand is the actual offer that you're creating, the actual pitch that you have, your presentation, etc., is not as important as the frame that you put around it. So if your product, if your offer or your opportunity is, let's say, a picture, that picture could be beautiful, but what's far more important than the picture actually is the frame you are creating around it. So we're going to help you master contrast. We're going to help you understand how to create frames, how to break apart frames, how to reframe, and help you see that an offer in one context to a prospect means something profoundly different than if you create a different context around the offer. I know I'm speaking at a high level here. Let me try to give you a specific example. So what we want to be able to do here is understand that concept of privileged moments and to be able to create them. So there is a simple example, and this comes from Robert Cialdini's book, Persuasion, which is a fantastic resource I highly recommend. And what he breaks apart in that book is this concept of moving somebody's mental associations from phase to phase to phase so that you can get them in a spot where they're actually ready to participate and enroll in what it is that you're offering them. So there was a specific example that he used in that book that I think about all the time, where there were some individuals at a shopping mall and they were trying to get sign-ups for their organization. And so they went up to people and just asked them to sign up. And I forget the exact number, but they got something like 30% of people to sign up. But then what they did is they changed their strategy by introducing just one question that they would ask before they would ask for the sign up. And that question was, do you consider yourself to be somebody who is open to new experiences? And then they went and asked for the sign up, and it shot up immensely, almost doubled if I remember correctly. So why is that significant? Well, the reason why it's significant is that in the second example, what the influencer is doing is they are literally priming their prospect with being the type of person who takes new chances and takes opportunities on. And then they're going to introduce the offer to do exactly that. that's a very powerful understanding we're going to return to and unpack in more detail. But this is what I want you to understand, at least for now, is that if we're going to make you a more powerful influencer, what we've got to do is be able to add a layer of metacognition, right? Thinking about how we think, to the interaction between you and the prospect. We've got to be able to understand that there is a lot more open canvas for us to be able to work with on a psychological level in order for you to be able to create this ultimate frame for your offer. And that what goes into getting somebody actually associated so much so with the opportunity that they will actually move forward. In order to do that, what we've got to be able to do is get them into that right emotional space, and then when the iron is hot, so to speak, we would want to strike. So once we're able to create the ultimate frame for our offer, then actually getting the person to take action is actually pretty easy. But a huge reason why people fail to influence is they start pitching their product or offer before they have even generated interest in the prospect, or before they have gotten the prospect sufficiently associated with the benefits and the pleasure, frankly, that this offer is going to give them. So that's what we want to help you understand, is understand the role of associations, help you understand how to move your prospect from associating taking action with you as being a painful action, and how we can shift that association so that it becomes pleasurable for them, and so that not taking action actually becomes something they associate with having massive and unbearable pain. That's what we're going for here. So how do we create the ultimate frame for your offer? So I guess we're on step 4 here then. So first thing that you want to do is you want to build massive interest. So we're going to have a whole module on this. We're going to show you what goes into this. Okay, but that simple example I gave you of the shopping mall is just a really clear little case study of how you could make sure that you're building more interest in your offer or opportunity before you actually move forward with going for the close. And so we're going to break that apart. How do you generate actual massive interest in your prospect before they actually take action? The next thing we're going to do after that is we're going to show you how to apply pressure to the action threshold. The action threshold may be a concept you have heard before. It's one commonly used in the industry of influencer sales, and for good reason, because what it does is it demystifies what actually goes into making somebody make a decision. Once we pick this apart, I think you're going to understand that influencing is not so mystical of a process. It's actually not too difficult to understand what gets people to take action and what keeps people from taking action. It's really a combination of about 4 forces. And once you understand the 4 forces that go into this, you can understand how to tip that action threshold in one direction or another. And that's going to be very, very powerful for you. Let me ask you, have you ever had an instance where you were on the cusp of making a decision, where you were in one way drawn heavily towards making the decision and then drawn in an opposite direction at the same time, and you were kind of weighing your options, and then all of a sudden, in one single moment, you said, okay, absolutely, yes, I'm doing it, or no, no way, I'm not doing it, and you had absolute certainty? Well, that's what we talk about when we mean the action threshold. What happened there is the action threshold tipped, and that the weights on the scale, so to speak, shifted a bit. So we want to help you understand what are those weights that affect people's decision making on either side, and how do you consciously move those from one side to another, and all the while staying in complete integrity with your prospect. So that's going to be a really fun session. Next, what I'm going to help you understand is that to have lasting influence with your prospect, you've got to be able to profoundly meet your prospect's needs. Profoundly meet your prospect's needs. And what you're going to understand when we go into this mastery module is that not everybody buys or takes action for the same reasons. Now, while there are some absolute universals between human beings, as far as what needs we need to satisfy, you're going to understand that there is a different hierarchy for each of us. And this is not Maslow's hierarchy of needs, by the way. But what you're going to understand is that there are essentially 6 key needs that you need to be mindful of. And this is a framework that actually comes originally from Anthony Robbins that I'm going to be excited to share with you. That is incredibly powerful, not only for getting a solid foundation around how you could apply this in a sales environment, fundraising, etc., but especially for those of you who are just looking to have lasting influence with people in non-commercial ways. If you want to be a better leader, if you want to be a more effective team leader, if you want to have more influence with your partner, your kids, your parents, etc., you're going to need to understand these 6 needs and how these 6 needs help us understand why people make certain decisions or refuse to make certain decisions. And that's going to be a really awesome training for us to go through with you. Next, what we want to be able to do is give you as many tools in your toolkit as possible. And so what we want to be able to do here is make sure that you are able to leverage universal principles of influence. And there are a handful of principles of influence that I have found to be most powerful. And so we're going to be able to unpack the 3 or 4 of those that are going to be able to help you apply pressure to this action threshold as much as possible. What you're going to find is that number 6 and number 7 here are really ways that allow us to apply further pressure to the action threshold. And so that you can understand that meeting somebody's needs at a profound level and utilizing these universal principles of influence, which I know sounds like a big term, but it's really just to mean some other tools for you, some other distinctions of how you can frame your offer. Once you understand both of those, you're going to be able to unpack that and apply pressure on that action threshold. And again, you're going to understand once we walk through this, that this is not sleazy sales tactics. What this is a framework to help you understand how to deeply meet your prospect's needs profoundly. And when that happens, they will have absolutely no problem taking action. And you will have absolute pride and confidence that you succeeded as an influencer who empowered somebody, as opposed to twisting their arm into doing something they shouldn't have been doing in the first place. And then the last piece here on creating the ultimate frame, and this one is very powerful, is we want to be able to present based on how they make decisions. Because not everybody makes decisions for the same reasons or using the same framework. And pretty much no one does, in fact. And I will tell you that one of the biggest mistakes I've found novice influencers make, you might be making it right now, most of them are, I certainly have, is that they influence based off what they think would be influential. That is to say that if they're selling a product, they go and they demonstrate their pitch based off of 2 or 3 bullet points that they find most influential. Well, that may not be what's influential for your prospect. And so once we unpack the needs that your prospect likely has and give you some profound tools for actually understanding what needs they prioritize at a higher level, you're going to be able to much more accurately provide flexibility to your process. You're going to be able to appreciate every single prospect for their own uniqueness and apply an entirely new, beautiful, diverse range of strategies to be able to meet their needs. So I hope you're getting excited, because what I'm trying to get you to understand here is that most influencers fail, number 1, because they're stuck in their own head and they're worried about their insecurities. They're not trying to sell a product they actually believe in. And number 2, because they think that that they literally are some sleazeball trying to get their prospect to do something they shouldn't be doing. So as soon as we're able to make sure there's real alignment about you standing behind what it is you're offering people, that takes care of the biggest piece of the problem. And once you start focusing more on how you profoundly meet somebody's needs at a deep level, then you get pride as an influencer, you get more impact with them, and that's how you develop that lasting and ethical influence we're talking about. So this is how we create an ultimate frame around your offer. And by the way, let me just finish up on this piece here, presenting based on how they make decisions. Not only is it important for you to understand that people will take action for different reasons in terms of your product. So, for example, some people might do it because of the efficiency. Some people might do it because of the significance that they get out of it. Some people might do it because of how they think others will perceive them if they do it. But similarly, what I am going to help you understand in this mastery module is that people have different modalities that is necessary for them to take action. And so some people need to, for instance, see something very visual. Some people need to just feel it. And also you're going to understand that you may have been approaching prospects too similarly, and that may have been causing some of them overwhelm. Because, for instance, if you're trying to apply lots of specificity on somebody who just wants to know the simple solution to their problem, then you're obviously going to lose that person. Contrastingly, some people need to know all of the details before they can make a decision. And so you may have been leaving too much out. So anyway, the whole point here is to show you that you need to have lots of flexibility. And we're going to show you not only to be aware that people approach making decisions differently, but we're going to actually show you tactical ways that you can pinpoint how does this person make decisions that will then therefore inform you of how you need to approach that. So this is how we create the ultimate frame, is to present it in a way that meets their needs and that is aligned with how they make decisions, and only doing so after you've built massive interest. So that's phase number 2. Very powerful stuff. Now phase number 3. Phase number 3 is overcome objections and deepen rapport. And this may be why some of you took action and decided to enroll, is how do I overcome objections? See, when I set out to become a master influencer, I thought that this right here was all I needed to know. I thought, if I can just learn how to overcome objections in a masterful way, then I'll be able to become a master influencer. And it's a huge piece of it. And so we're going to make sure we unpack this in detail for you. But what I want you to understand is you don't need to be fearful about objections. You need to get excited about objections. Most influencers view an objection as a complete hindrance, a complete barrier between themselves and the actual close that they're trying to create. And in fact, if you've got the right psychology around an objection, you'll understand it can actually be a launching pad to you creating that ultimate closure with the prospect. So get excited about that. And let me just ask you, what would it mean to you if instead of every time an objection comes up, you got, drop face and you got into this sullen place, but instead you perked up, got excited, got energized, and realized, oh, great, now I've got an opportunity to really meet their needs at an even deeper level. That's what we're going for here, and we're going to show you how to do that in a profound way. So the first piece here that we're going to be looking after, and I guess, so we're on step 9, is create lasting alignment. Okay? So I'm going to give you a specific framework that you can use whenever an objection comes up. And by the way, we're going to also pull out every single common objection that you're going through or that you're likely to experience. And we're going to make sure that you show up with a clear plan in place for how you can actually overcome those objections. Because what's probably happened in the past is those objections have come up and you go, oh crap, I don't know what to do here. You didn't premeditate how you would actually overcome that objection or address it. And we want to make sure that you're going into every situation of influence fully prepared. And what that means is us having a new level of awareness and intentionality about how you approach each situation of influence. So creating lasting alignment means that when an objection comes up, you actually use that as an opportunity to deepen rapport, to show this person, I understand you. to say to them, I acknowledge you. I may not necessarily agree, but I acknowledge, and I'm going to help you find a solution in this area that I know is a concern for you. So we're absolutely going to do that. What we're going to also do is show you the power of questions, how to harness the power of questions. Most people are not asking the right questions in situations of influence, and we're going to show you how this directly relates to putting somebody in the right association for them to be able to move forward and be influenced. We're going to show you what are the right questions that you need to be asking yourself so that you are primed and ready to serve this person at a deep level. And we're going to show you what kinds of questions you could actually use to get your prospect associated with the types of associations, really smart there, that you need in order for them to take action. Let me just give you a simple example for the moment. And that is, if you go into a situation of influence, if you are asking yourself, what could go wrong? Is that going to be an empowering question to ask? Absolutely not, right? Because the mind has got to produce an answer as soon as that question is asked. But similarly, if you were able to ask yourself instead, I wonder how I could deeply serve this person today. All of a sudden now, the mind has got to produce and bring forward to your mind new questions, or excuse me, new answers that are more empowering to you. And so is the person who asks themselves, what could go wrong, going to have a profoundly different result than somebody who says, how could I serve this person? Absolutely. Absolutely. And you're going to understand that emotional state is incredibly key to going into each one of these arenas. So we're going to help you harness the power of questions. And then finally here, or excuse me, the third piece in this one is we're going to help you profoundly deepen rapport. Okay? Profoundly deepen rapport. So again, we're going to add lots of flexibility to your toolbox here. We're going to show you what kind of signals do you need to pick up on so that moment to moment, you've got what we call rapport. And when we say rapport, what we mean is responsiveness. You ever been in a conversation with somebody and you're talking to them and they're kind of looking off around and thinking about something else, and immediately you realize that you don't have their full attention? That's what happens when you lose rapport. But when you've got rapport, it means that somebody is leaned in. It means that they're engaged. It means that they're with you. It means that you've got their attention. So what we're going for is a situation in which you've profoundly deepened rapport with the person you're trying to influence. And how do you maintain that? So we're going to talk about some body language. We're going to talk about tonality and give you some vocal training to make sure that you're meeting some people differently than you are others. And we're going to make sure you're really setting yourself up for success in this area so that somebody feels in a moment that they're connected to you, that they literally feel that you are a friend, that you are a force of good for them, and that they can trust you. That's what we're going for. So next, final piece of overcoming objections and deepening rapport. I think you'll like this one. We want to break limiting patterns and have some fun. Have some damn fun. You know, most influencers are not effective because they just are so damn uptight. We got to teach you how to have some fun. And as silly as that sounds, we are actually going to plan how you can actually have fun with a prospect. We're going to make sure that you've got a couple key ways mapped out where you can playfully interrupt any sort of limiting pattern that's going on. You ever been with a prospect and there's a moment of tension? What if in that moment of tension, you were able to introduce levity and laughter? Well, what happens when that occurs is immediately you've got profound rapport with the prospect. Immediately they feel connected to you. There's a level of authenticity that you are bringing to that interaction that they will get excited about. They will get profoundly excited about. And most influencers are, again, so stuck up in their own head that they're not having some damn fun. So that's what we want to make sure that you're able to do. And also to make sure that any limiting patterns that are occurring in the prospect's mind or in your own mind are able to be broken. So if the prospect is intensely focused on price, for for example, and they're totally drilled down into that area. We want to show you a way where you can get them out of that and get them associated with a different area. So that's going to be awesome. We're going to be looking at that. So this is the third phase, overcoming objections and deepening rapport, which brings us to our last, final phase. And this phase is going to be creating closure and commitment. And in addition to closure and commitment, what I would also add here too is a future. A future between yourself and the prospect. A future between the prospect and the product. A future between your organization and the prospect, for example. But what we're going for is not only to master the close, okay, so that's going to be the first thing that we're looking at, is master the close. We're going to show you all the things you need to know to overcome objections, to circle back so you can always ask again, and how you can get that close every time. And again, every time that it is aligned with your prospect's needs and that you've got a way to make it happen. We're going to show you how to master that. But then beyond that, what we're going to also show you how to do, I guess this must be 13 because now I've got 14 here, is create a compelling future. Meaning that this close is actually closed, meaning it's not going to open itself back up again. You ever had a situation like this where you've been in communication, you've gotten the sale, or you thought that something was done, but then a day later, a week later, a month later, they said, oh yeah, you know, I really been thinking about it, or I went back home, I talked to my wife or my husband, and we just don't really think it's that good of an idea. That is really tough spot to be in as an influencer, and I know that space, both in my time as high dollar fundraiser and when I was working in direct sales. You know, you work your ass off with somebody, you think you've really met their needs, you get that sale done, and then a week later they come back and they say, yeah, it's not for me. All of a sudden you just feel immediately disheartened. You don't even know how to address that in a way that's going to create a favorable outcome for both of you. So what we want to make sure is that everything is tied down, that close really is a close, that it stays closed. And we're going to show you that. We're also going to show you some very specific patterns that you can use to achieve that close, and show you essentially the same pattern you're going to need in order to overcome any objection and move towards a close. When we talk about creating a compelling future, what we mean here is that you've gotten them associated not just with the pleasure of taking action with this opportunity right now that's going to tip that action threshold, but where you really create a map in their mind of what the future will entail for them, and to get that associated profoundly with a pleasurable outcome for their future self. Okay, that was a lot of words. What I really mean is you're getting them excited and you're creating an anticipatory feeling in them about how this product or service or what have you is going to provide value for them over time. And so that way, essentially, we're keeping that sale closed over and over. And then the final piece, final step in this entire process that we're going to look at is follow up or fail. And by the way, this goes for both scenarios. This goes for whether you got the close or you didn't get the close. So we're going to show you the absolutely critical element of follow-up, what effective follow-up looks like, what ineffective follow-up looks like, and what is actually important for you to achieve in the follow-up. Because most people are just following up just to do it. They heard somewhere, oh, I should be following up. And so they just kind of do it as a sort of haphazard thing. Actually, the biggest mistake people make is they don't follow up at all. So that's probably the most significant mistake. But we also want to show you, why is this critical? What are we actually going for here? Because again, in this entire process, I hope you're understanding that none of this is just reacting. We're going to be intentional. We're going to be conscious. We're going to be diligent and deliberate in this entire process from start to finish. Because let me ask you, have you ever been in a situation of influence where you've got an opportunity to influence somebody, but you felt like you were just reacting to the emotional flurry that was going on inside of you? You know, you got angry or you got frustrated and then you didn't know how to get yourself out of that? Well, that's because you were just in reaction mode. You were in fear and you're just reacting to the entire situation. We want to get you out of that. We want to make sure that when you go into a situation of influence, you've got clear, committed outcome that you're there to achieve, and that you're showing up intentionally, that you are walking into a situation of influence with the emotional resources you need to actually make it happen. And additionally, we want to make sure that once this close is tied up and you've created a compelling future with them, that your follow-ups are equally as intentional, that there's a clear reason why you're doing it, and we're going to show you a specific sequence you could use that you can model for whatever applies best to your circumstances. So I think you're going to find that that's very, very profound and powerful. What I want to do in the next session is we're going to dive into the most common reasons why people fail. Now that we've got on a roadmap of what is actually going to help you achieve lasting influence, I want to make sure that you are primed and ready to understand what pitfalls you've been falling into in the past, and so that we make sure that we are on guard for those as we move through unpacking all of these other critical distinctions. So I hope you played full out. I hope you took some notes. I hope you're ready to dive in. I hope I've got you hooked. I hope you were excited to master these principles, and I can tell you it's going to be a wild ride. So thank you again for being here. I just want to acknowledge the fact that you are here taking action to develop the most powerful skills that will move your life forward. It's a fantastic thing, and I know it's going to move your life in that direction you need it to very, very fast. So thanks for being here, and I will see you in the next session.